Okay, so we're going to do a little swing analysis of James Ridyard's video from not too long ago. I think it was probably this last week at the British Open, but I have no idea. So anyway, like the blue pants, pretty good there. So we're going to go over first from caddy view, which is right over here on the left, and I put a little dot here for his left shoulder, dot right here for his center, his left hip, and his left knee is right here. Okay? His right knee is right there. The red line represents his ball position. I'm going to speak very slowly as we go through this. So we can clearly see that the left shoulder is going down. The right shoulder is going up. The left shoulder is still going down. Going down until the left arm is parallel to the ground. Now, interestingly, if you look at what his left knee did, his left knee went down. Okay? And this is what's interesting. There's a little bump here. If we put into 2D view, look where his head is, look where his left hip is, and then I want you to see this one little move there. This is pretty important and pretty interesting. He starts to extend and stand up before he starts down. Okay, so now his back has moved here. So that's not rotation, guys, that's extension. Alright, so he's moved his left shoulder in, back, and down, and then extended to the top end of the swing. Alright, so that's happening. Alright, unless I'm completely a fool, that's what it looks like is happening, because his head's actually moving forward before he's hitting the ball. Okay? Now, we're going to look at this coming down as he transitions to the downswing. We can pretty much agree, if I eliminate these lines, okay, that his left shoulder's moved forward, his left knee has moved past its original point. Okay, and now he doesn't do it with the hips, and we're going to get into this in a second. His hips actually start to rotate, and this is more of a product of his backswing. So his hips have to start over-rotating too quickly instead of moving forward. And this kind of develops into some sequence issues. So, not saying this is a bad swing, this is actually a really good swing. It has nothing to do with his playing ability. He's just, as a player, manufactured some moves in here that are pretty interesting. A lot of stuff that Sergio does, Rricky does. And actually Rory McIlroy does a lot of the same pieces with his hips that Rricky does, because both these players swing on a different plane line than what we're told. So we can look at the knee there as moved forward. See that there's elbows have separated a little bit, which we'll get into here in a second. But we can definitely say that he has a pretty stable upper axis, and he moves slightly forward as he hits it, because it's evident that his left knee has moved past his left foot. Okay? Without a doubt. Okay? And as he hits it, right wrist angle's good. He starts to extend his hips, and if we were to draw a line right here, I'd say his hips are forward and his head is stayed centered. Alright? So there's some differential, we call that axis tilt, between the head and the hips. That's to help get the ball in the air, and also to keep the hips turning. Because if he didn't do that, his hips would stall and the club would flip over and he'd hit the ball in the left rough. And he doesn't like to do that. So, hopefully that makes sense on the caddy view. Now, we're just going to take a backtrack here he has a interesting movement pattern on the backswing where he has a reverse roll of his arms. So his right arm stays on top of the left, the face stays pointing at the ball for a long time. Okay, but that doesn't really matter, because when he gets halfway back, his arms line up. So you see a little move there where counter roll, and then it releases onto the line. Okay, so we can see now with him, his right arm, now this is partly camera angle, but it's still, this elbow is still underneath this red line. And so what happens is, because of that, it swings on a flatter plane. He makes his transition, keeps his shoulders steep, but his delivery is going to be excessively shallow unless he was to rotate out of the way with his hips. So that's why his hips start to over-rotate. And you can tell because his heel, if you can see this, starts to spin just slightly up a little soon right there. Okay? So that takes a little bit of the forward piece out of the hips, but it pulls the club out to the plane line. Alright? And then as he comes into it, you're going to notice something interesting that actually him and Rory both do. Both of them now, this club, because the sequence isn't matching as much as some players, but after this point it doesn't really matter. Basically, his pass being thrown out to the right, you're going to notice that his club gets thrown out to the right of the circle. Okay. Now, knowing very well, and I think most people do, that club face release has no bearing on much of anything. It's just, if this was rolled over, we'd have some issues. You can see that that club's pretty stable and just staying pretty square to the arc for a pretty long period of time. Okay? And we can see that right there. So that toe is pretty much like that. Alright? So, probably hitting a pretty straight shot here. But when we look back at his swing, a lot of stuff is very orthodox and very, very good. The motion, the athleticism, all that stuff is nice. Definitely the couple pieces here coming right into impact that are compensations. Elbows separate, hips tend to spin just a little bit, and that throws the club out on the arc, in to out pretty much for an extended period of time. So anyway, hopefully this makes sense. This is, a great golf swing. There's a lot of good stuff in here to emulate. And kids, you can start off wearing the hat and the blue pants. That's a good way to get started. All right.